woman in a supermarket tried to eject me from and take my wheelchair. So there I was in a rural Shaw's. For those not in an area with a Shaw's, it's a standard supermarket with a club that makes things cheaper, which is their way of hiding their markup. Stuff is just cheaper a few miles down the road. Unfortunately, there were a few things I could only get there, like my flavor of caffeine and food for the dogs. I was using my power chair, which back then I needed more often. It's an Eagle HD foldable deal, and it works great. I had been hit pretty hard by post-COVID and was very sedentary at that time in my life, along with a pre-existing joint problem. So I'm leaning forward to get a flat of Monster and stick it under my seat on the rack when a woman pushes on my back and says, "I need that." "You don't, you're younger." As I was belted in, nothing happened. It was only luck that I was belted in. Usually I would have undone it to pick up something heavy. I sat up and pushed her hands off of me, saying, "What the F?" And she shakes the back of my chair like it's a dinner chair or something, and goes, "You can use the scooter, the chair is better and I'm old." And she points at the trashy supermarket scooter she's using. I stare at her in total shock for a moment and say, "This is my wheelchair. Get away from me. You can't use personal stuff in supermarkets. Give me the chair." She started shaking it with each statement. So at that point I just hit the maximum speed on my power chair and took off, ripping it out of her hands. It was either let go or be dragged on her face because she clearly wasn't super steady and needed a scooter herself. And we're off on the dumbest chase in creation, mostly because supermarket scooters go slower than any other mobility device. I buzzed over to the service desk and cut the line and said, "I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, but there's a woman following me trying to push me out of my chair. And take it." And from behind me they can hear, "Get back here," in the most wheezy buzz of the slow scooter. In the moment, it was really enraging that she was being so entitled and frustrating, and I just wanted to get my dog food and leave. But in memory, it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. They let me into the little back office area, and they and the whole line of people waiting just sort of watched as she came over. And it took so long. The scooter was so slow, and she's yelling about how I don't need the chair, and how she should get it because she's older and more disabled. It takes like a full 20 seconds for her to get from one end of the store to the other, and everyone is just staring as she rides full of glory at 0.00001 mile per hour with her face red and her glasses hanging off one ear. So she finally gets to the desk, and they calmly explain that the wheelchair isn't store property, and if she tries to steal from another customer they'll have to call the police. She starts shouting at the employees that she knows full well you can't bring personal equipment into the supermarket, so they're lying. And the other woman behind the counter says with a bit more attitude, "Lady, why do you think we care if you bring a wheelchair into the supermarket?" At this point I think something either clicked, or she just realized that an entire line of people were staring at her, and not kindly. She suddenly asked where to find the artichokes. I almost coughed on my own spit. The worker just stared back and pointed back where the woman had come and said, "Produce." And the woman left. I admit that for the rest of my visit I avoided any aisle she was in because I didn't want her close enough to grab me again. Now I can laugh about it for the absurdist comedy moment it was. In retrospect I feel there's a reason here, like her husband told her they shouldn't buy a thing like I had because they're not allowed to be in the supermarket. That's the best answer I can possibly come up with for that wild nonsense. Wherever you are, crazy lady, I hope you bought your own Eagle HD. From the comments, I totally would have laughed my butt off if I had seen a scooter chase around a grocery store. I was also thinking how crazy this lady had to be to think that folks couldn't use their own wheelchairs at the grocery store. I mean, what is a wheelchair-bound person supposed to do? Check their chair at customer service and ask for help to be put on the store's janky scooter. I seriously wanted to scream at her about the AITA and how no one can tell someone they can't have their chair in a public space. But I am also the literal worst at reacting with verbs and nouns when stressed. I shut down and just start roaring things angrily with curse words, and it's never even a little funny or enjoyable for anyone. So the best I could do was be quiet. I actually prepared a rant about the AITA after this event, just in case. Homeless cooking in public always leads to trouble. I posted here for a similar occurrence back in early October. I am homeless. I was in Toronto, but I have since moved on to Niagara Falls. I just want to say Niagara has been great to me. In the week I have been here, I have had half a dozen job interviews and have second interviews set up for next week. Also, the people here are generally decent and treat you like a human, unlike Toronto where you're treated poorly no matter where you go. That being said, I don't know why there's always that one person who sees you cooking or preparing a meal in public and takes it as a huge offense. I was in the downtown area of the Falls. I have a friend, Susan, who works in one of the hotels. She let me do some laundry and grab a shower. She's a great older lady. I did all that and was heading back to where I set up for the night in a secluded spot in the woods. The trip takes about 2 hours walking from the downtown area. It has been a long day of walking, and I was getting really hungry. I keep some food stuff in my bag. I can't really justify spending $3 to $5 on cheap, crappy food at McDonald's or other fast food. I need to save what I have. For that price, I can get more nutrition, a bigger, more filling meal if I just take a few minutes to cook or heat up my own food. And that's what I did. I set up under a tree in an empty parquet, got under my umbrella, and set up my alcohol stove. I started cooking my rice and beans. It was raining. Heck, it still is, but I'm warm, set up at camp. But I don't get it. Even on a crappy rainy day, that one person who is going to be a jerk to you for cooking out in the open seems to just find you. A man walking his dog on the other side of the park noticed me. He made eye contact as he saw me looking at the flame of my small camp stove. The guy approached me, and unfortunately, he had no kind words. He yelled at me when he got close. He didn't even wait a second. He yelled, screaming that I could burn the park down. It's a cheap alcohol stove. It's not burning anything down. It can barely boil water. In response, I calmly said, "Hey there, bud. I'm making beans. If you're hungry, I can share. I don't mind. I get angry too when I'm hungry." That seemed to make him stutter. He changed his tone and started yelling that I can't stay here. I can't camp in the park. I just replied, "Oh, okay. This is your spot. Where do you camp, bud?" He yelled like a child, saying, "I'm not homeless." I looked him dead in the eyes, put on a big smile, and said, "Oh, really? I didn't know." I told him my beans were done, reached into my bag to grab my spoons, and tried to hand him one, saying, "It's time to eat." The guy was confused, his face turned red in total embarrassment. He walked away, shouting about this not being a place to stay, blah, blah, blah. Something I've learned when dealing with difficult people out here: don't get mad, don't try to kill them with kindness. Just act like a big old dopey dumb butt with a big smile on your face. It confuses them so much they don't know how to react. I've had too many interactions with jerks, and it can be funny sometimes. A few things I need to say. Yes, I have a cell phone, and yes, I have a phone plan. I've had this phone for over a year, long before I became homeless. A phone plan costs around $20 a month and is a necessity when looking for work. No, I didn't record it. My phone was wrapped in a cloth in a Ziploc bag in my larger backpack. Why? I can't afford to replace it, so I keep it safe from damage, both physical and water related. How did I become homeless? No, I don't do drugs, and I don't drink. It was due to a medical issue and a bad divorce. Now my credit is shot. Why don't I stay in a shelter? They are dangerous, and they are also full. Shelters turn away over 200 people a day, and unless you're an addict or in immediate danger of abuse, you're super low on the priority list. Get a job. I'm trying. I've had a lot of interviews this week. Just thought I would get all that out of the way. I feel bad if I don't answer the questions when I get them in the comments. Comment: you handled that 1,000 times better than most people would have. I hope you are safe and warm and life gets so much better for you. OP, unfortunately this isn't the first time this exact situation had happened. Mind you, the first time it was a woman, a real bee, who kicked my food over.